Hi, welcome. Today I want to talk about difficult books. So I was in a conversation with Eddie from the Read Well podcast, and I will link his channel below. But he and I were talking about reading difficult books, and we decided to do a little collaboration. So he posted a video on how to approach philosophy books, and today I will be talking about fiction. I will link his wonderful video in the description box down below. If you're interested in reading philosophy, then I highly recommend checking out his channel. First of all, what are difficult books? To me, difficult books are books that require some background knowledge, some research before you get started, a complex writing style, books that are written with a lot of symbolism, use of metaphors, archaic language, dialects, books that are packed with complex ideas. It also means that reading these books for a second time is often a good idea, and you will usually get more out of a second reading than out of the first. A difficult or challenging book requires active reading. So that means doing research, focusing on what you're reading, giving the book your full attention. It speaks for itself that a difficult book for me is not necessarily a difficult book for you. So let's talk about complex writing. This will also be different for everyone because everyone is on a different level. If you read English, not everyone will have English as their native tongue. I read English all the time, and it's my third language here in Belgium. Evidently, your level in a language will also play a role. Generally speaking, this is a list of things that can make writing more complex. So, long sentences, a lot of references, historical events, archaic language or dialects, a lot of characters, digressions, dense prose, but also things like stream of consciousness. When I started out reading classic literature and older works, I learned a few tricks here and there. And one of those things was the Project Gutenberg website. On that website, you can find an astonishing amount of old books. And why I mention this is because when you're interested in reading a certain book, for example, what's this one? La Reine Margot by Alexandre Dumas, so the Queen Margot. Let's say that you want to read this one. You go to the Gutenberg website, you download the ebook version, and you can just take a look at the first couple of chapters. Will it be something that you could enjoy? And when you think that this book will be your cup of tea, that it won't be too difficult, then you can go ahead and purchase it. So that's what I've been doing. My cat Toulouse just came to say hi, so if you see his tail in front of the camera, I apologize. Anyway, so Project Gutenberg is really handy if you want to decide whether or not you want to read a book, and also to find out if the level of the book matches your reading level at the moment. What I also would like to advise is to read what interests you and not what other people think you should read. Obviously, picking books with topics that interest you will make it so much easier for you to hold focus. Okay, so here is some general advice that I have for you. First of all, don't underestimate the power of being well rested. To keep focus and to read, if you want to read with focus, and if you want to read more difficult material, then you need to be well rested, get enough sleep, because reading when you're tired is never a good idea. Secondly, you want to allow yourself to grow and evolve as a reader. When you have just started out reading the classics, you don't want to start with the most difficult, most challenging books out there. Okay, let me just blow out this candle because this is way too dangerous. Next, the right mindset and pacing. So you should start reading with the right mindset. If you're going to tackle a book that is a bit more challenging for you, then you need to know that you will be going through the pages slower, that you will be rereading chapters, that you would spend more time with this book than with another easier book. It's okay to reread sections or entire chapters. We always have this feeling, especially today, that everything has to go fast. And we need to relearn to challenge ourselves, to take things slower, and to realize again that it's rewarding to work for things. Reading something that is slightly above your level can feel too difficult sometimes, and it's easier to just give up. But we need to learn to push through, to challenge ourselves, and to, not take the easy road. What you can also do is summarize what you've read. Doesn't have to be on paper, it can be if you want to, but it can also just be in your head. If you finish a chapter, you can just tell yourself out loud or in your head what it is you have just been reading. Buddy reads can also help. So for example, let's say you want to tackle Les Misérables. This is a very big read, and it can be so much fun to just find someone who wants to read it with you, and then you can talk about it. This also makes it so much less intimidating. Next, you really want to focus fully. And I know nowadays that this can also be very challenging. We have distractions everywhere, and most people really struggle with focusing on a very deep level because we're constantly disturbed by our phone. Mostly it's our phone. If you are struggling with this, you could set a timer, maybe that works, and set a timer for like 20 minutes and say to yourself, okay, I'm going to focus fully on this book until the timer goes off. And then you don't have to worry about reading too long, missing some appointment or something. Of course, you could also just turn off the internet on your phone. Another piece of advice is to have another book going. And this is a bit of a controversial topic, but I like to read multiple books at the same time. It helps me to read more. I talk a lot about it on the channel, but it helps me to read more, especially when you have a challenging, difficult, demanding book going. You won't always feel like you're in the mood to read it. So if you've had a long day and you want to sit down and relax, and you only have Les Misérables going, and you really don't want to focus that much, then you can just grab your other book that you've been reading. And this is just so helpful to me, and I hope that if you haven't tried it yet, that you will give this a try, because it has changed my reading completely. So if you're reading something challenging, try and grab another book to read alongside it that is easier to get through, that is more relaxing. I would also like to advise you to look up things. Look up references that are made in the book. So classic authors often reference to other authors of their time or the past, to pieces of art, to music, to opera, plays, all kinds of things. It makes the experience more immersive if you put in the effort to look up things. And this way, I love doing that because you get to know new pieces of music, new pieces of art. And I always like to keep a list of authors that are mentioned, or works of literature that are mentioned in the books that I'm reading, because it gives me this kind of backlog to go to when I don't know what to read. It is extra fun when the author mentions a book that is on your shelf and isn't read yet. So that gives you a book to read when you finish the current one. Of course, you also want to look up historical places and historical events if they are mentioned. Next is to pick an edition with footnotes and really think through which edition you want to get yourself. Good choices to go for are the Penguin Classics, the Oxford World's Classics, the Norton Critical editions. These have amazing footnotes, they have amazing introductions, which you want to read after you finish the novel, by the way, because they're full of spoilers. But I highly recommend getting yourself a good edition with footnotes. Of course, doing background research can also be very helpful. Sometimes we understand a work better if we know what the author has been going through throughout his life experiences, the things he struggled with, his political beliefs, and so on. So knowing the background of an author can sometimes really give you useful insights. But I do realize that it's tricky because you don't want to get any spoilers for the book. However, when you look into the life of an author, you usually won't spoil the book. It is only when you read about the novel itself that you will sometimes read something that you don't want to read. So if you do any background research, just be a little bit careful. Also, it's all right to not understand everything. You can always return to the book whenever you want. And if it's not the time, it's not the time. You can go back to it later. Don't let yourself be influenced by people who look down on you. Don't let other readers bring you down, who say that the book is easy to read. I've had many experiences over the years like that. For example, when I first read The Silmarillion by Tolkien, I just didn't understand. It was too difficult for the level I was at the moment. And there can sometimes be so much condescending behavior, readers saying that it's such an easy to read book and that people who are unable to get through it are ridiculous and so on. Don't let them influence you. Just go at your own pacing, go at your own level. If a work is too challenging for you at the moment, it doesn't matter. You can come back to it later. I've come back to books that were too difficult so many times, like The Silmarillion. I didn't understand the first time, but now I've read it 3 times, and every time I read it, it gets better. It's now my favorite work of Tolkien. I think it's absolutely brilliant. But, it was a very difficult first try. Also, if you've been following my channel, The Hunchback of Notre Dame de Paris by Victor Hugo is my favorite novel of all time. And when I first read it, I wasn't ready. So please give yourself the time to evolve as a reader. Every book that we read helps us evolve, and we get better as a reader. Please don't be discouraged if something is above your level right now. Okay, I just quickly had to change the battery of my camera because I've been recording for so long because the cats kept disturbing me. All right, so almost finished here. But I still wanted to mention using the internet. Using the internet is also great. So SparkNotes, for example, where you get chapter summaries. Also, Wikipedia often offers plot summaries, chapter summaries. Take advantage of those. YouTube can, of course, be very useful as well. So listening to people who are analyzing the book, talking about the book, and so on. And then finally, concerning note-taking, you could start finding a system that works for you. I love taking notes. I have a lot of commonplace books, and I don't take extensive notes for every book that I read, but I do take notes if I see something interesting. I note down references, I write down my favorite quotes. It is very rare that I don't have a single note on a book that I've read. But I talk about note-taking a lot on my channel, so if you're interested, I have this video called Victorian Reading Habits, The Lost Art of Note-Taking, and I will link it. But just interacting with the book that you're reading is going to help you with your focus, with your understanding, just tremendously. Underline, use tabs, use a notebook. That's going to be really helpful. That usually helps for a lot of people. Taking notes is a huge part of my reading habits, and yes, I hope it will be helpful to you as well. Thank you for spending time with me and the cats again, and I will see you next week. So here is Toulouse. It is okay to reread chapters. Dea? Okay, let's take a break.